welcome to the Mighty Marvel Show with me, Paul, and we are recording this episode hot off the presses as soon as the series finale of WandaVision has just aired. So quick, cover your ears. There will be spoilers. I am not going to ruin what happens. I'm not really going to talk a massive amount about the final episode itself. I just want to eulogize on how wonderful WandaVision has been, and I've got a few reasons for it, and I just thought I'd share them with you today. So let's talk the first one. The main reason why I think WandaVision is amazing is the MCU is back, baby. This is the first series from Marvel Studios. We've had 23 movies over the last 13 years, no, 12 years, because one only last year from 2008, so 13 years from now. It's been an amazing rollercoaster ride. The MCU is not finished. The MCU continues and the MCU is back. And WandaVision is the first Marvel Studios production to air on Disney+. It's the first long-form storytelling that they have done. It was amazing. 9 episodes. It's just fantastic. Wonderful, wonderful series. Had a few bumps at the start where people were like, oh, I'm not sure. It's a 1950s. It's black and white. But the premise of the program is Wanda and Vision are living the happy suburban life in or through sitcoms of the different eras. How is that happening? Why? Well, all was revealed throughout this series. But the greatest thing about it, the MCU is back. Had a real feel about the MCU to it, and that real look, that real style, just brilliant. Threw in some really great characters and some really great sort of stories, and that is the next thing that's so great about it: Easter eggs. Now, the beauty with the MCU is after 13 years and 23 movies, the history it's built up of its own little sort of in-universe history is great. So some great throwbacks in this. Also, it had some amazing Easter eggs back into the comics. And the best thing about Easter eggs, I think, is if you are not someone who's read all the comics, or you're someone who's not watched all the MCU movies, or you're someone who's watched them all, but not like a million times like I have and like loads of fans have, you're a casual viewer, you're aware of them. You don't need to know the Easter egg. You might miss the Easter egg, and it's fine. It doesn't ruin the story for you. It doesn't take you out of the story. It doesn't change the dynamics of the story. But if you do know the Easter eggs and you do know the background to it, it's amazing. It just enhances your viewing. It just gives you that little extra chef's kiss of perfection when these things are thrown into the story. I have some very specific examples that would just squeal with delight moments, and my particular favourites out of this series is looking at the comics first. Some real comic deep cuts. You have clearly got the comics accurate costumes of the Scarlet Witch and Vision and Quicksilver as well, and Wiccan, Billy. You've got brilliant throwbacks to those comic accurate costumes, which you never thought you'd see on the screen, but you do, and they're awesome. You've also got the white Vision. So the Vision we see at the end was put together by Sword to be a weapon to destroy Wanda and finish the, sort of the Vision that Wanda created inside the Westview Hex. That is a throwback to the John Byrne era, the mid-80s comics, where the government thought Vision was too powerful. They took him, they stripped him down, and they put him back into like an emotionless android type thing. And that's what we got with this Vision here. And we saw this Vision evolve through this series finale as well, which is great. And there's clearly more to come from that android going forward. So that's excellent. That's a real sort of throwback. And you kind of thought, is that where they were heading? As it teased it through the series with this Vision. We didn't know whether Wanda had this Vision's body. It was made to look like she'd stolen it from Sword, but it didn't turn out to be the case. She created this one with the remnants, the Mind Stone power that she had, and we had the Vision face off against the Vision. So the white android Vision and the Vision that we know and love over the MCU. So that's a great comics throwback. The Hex is another one. Darcy called the Hex, which was obviously the force field that Wanda threw up around Westview when the sort of chaos magic came out of it. More about chaos magic in a minute. The Hex was named by Darcy in the program, but the Hex is what Wanda's powers were known as in the comics. Hex power. So that's a real, again, little sort of hook to that, which is great to know. Now we then had some half movie, half comic ones, which are great. So the Darkhold book is a book of sorcery of dark magic that's been synonymous throughout the comics. We've seen it in Agent Carter and the series then as well, the Darkhold book. And we're now seeing the Darkhold book. It looks to have been the book that was missing in Doctor Strange, the first Doctor Strange movie, from the library that obviously Wong was in charge of, the missing book. So the Darkhold book, and the Darkhold book is the dark power which we see Agnes or Agatha trying to. She has it in a dungeon in her own house. And she's obviously practicing the dark arts, which we then see Wanda with at the end of the series finale here. So the Darkhold is a real crossover between the two. In terms of some other live action Easter eggs, you've got some really, really cool ones. Like you've got Jimmy Woo, who's mastered his close-up online magic that he was desperately trying to master in Ant-Man and the Wasp. And we've seen him a couple of times in the program, flick his business card up and get the handcuffs off in this final episode, in episode 9. So there's some real sort of good hybrids between those. And these are some now playing into the history of the MCU, that they're calling back to some of their characters. Darcy herself is an Easter egg. She was in the first 2 Thor movies. So we started to build a rich portfolio of characters. Now, linked to that, I then throw in Monica Rambeau, played brilliantly by Teyonah Parris in this series. It's just awesome. And what they've done with Monica's journey is fantastic. First saw a live action in the 1995 set Captain Marvel movie. Was obviously from a couple of years ago, where she was very young, Lieutenant Trouble. She was known to Carol and her mother Maria. And we've now seen her as an adult working with swords. She dusted, she blipped back, and we've now got the Monica Rambeau, who's got the power set, which obviously come out of going in and out of the hex and having a power. The power set of what could likely be Photon is the comic book name she'll probably take, which in the movies we've seen as her mother's call sign when she was a test pilot. She's been Spectrum in the comics as well, so that could go either way, and that inevitably, as we saw at the end here, will lead into Captain Marvel 2, where we know she's appearing again. But what's great with that is they've now worked around the origin story. The difficulty with introducing new characters is you always have to sacrifice a lot of the story time and the screen time for their origin. Now, Marvel have been very clever on this in the last few years. We saw Spider-Man and Black Panther introducing Captain America Civil War. So when their first movies came out, the first in the franchises, they didn't have to be origin stories. They didn't waste those origin stories. Captain Marvel herself, she was already powered up at the start of the movie. She had her power, and the story became working through in flashbacks how she got those powers. So it hasn't wasted a whole movie on that origin story, and I'm sure we'll see that going forward. But what we've got going into Captain Marvel 2 is we have got a fully powered up, a fully awesome Monica Rambeau, who's going to be hitting the ground running. I'm calling Photon. Let's say Photon. I think it'll be Photon. We can come back and check this when that movie comes out in a couple of years. So that's awesome. They're all brilliant. Even more awesome, I got to throw in the cast, and I'm going to particularly at this stage just focus on, because we talked about Teyonah Parris being brilliant, Jimmy Woo, Randolph Park as Jimmy Woo, excellent. Some great performances. I mean, this is a stellar cast all the way through. The noticeable ones to pull out is you've got Kat Dennings as Darcy Lewis. You've obviously got Paul Bettany as the Vision, just exceptional, turning his hand to comedy and slapstick. He must have had an absolute blast filming this, working through all the different sitcom eras, and obviously going into the white emotionless android Vision as well, up against himself. Just brilliant. And then obviously huge special mention to Catherine Hahn, who was Agnes / Agatha, and it was Agatha after all. So amazing performance, a very different Agatha Harkness we're seeing in the MCU than we saw in the comic books. Left the door open. I mean, in the comic books, for those who aren't familiar with the character, Agatha Harkness is like the mentor and the guide for Wanda. She becomes a nanny for her children initially. She helps Wanda gain control and understanding of her power. So she is more of a mentor and an ally to Wanda. They've gone a different way in the MCU, no question about that. They've gone for the darker, villainous turn on Agatha, which I think has worked absolutely perfect. I don't really have any issue with that. But they've left the door ajar for that mentor role, where there could be that uneasy standoff where she may need her. Wanda may need Agatha in the future to help her. And the beauty is, again, what they've done, which is great, instead of building that sort of universe of characters, they haven't killed Agatha off. She's out there. She's obviously mind wiped and now living the life of Agnes, the nosy neighbour, at the end of this. So they've left that door open for her to return in future. And I think that would be very, very likely. Not necessarily leading straight into Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, where we expect this did Sorcerer Extreme. We know the Sorcerer. Oh, blimey, I can't even speak today. The Sorcerer Supreme, there you go, will be allied, or we don't know that, with Wanda, because we know that Wanda Maximoff is appearing in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Does that mean Agatha's coming in? Don't know. Let's see. But the door is left open for Agatha there, which is great. And again, that the performance of Catherine Hahn all the way through was just awesome in this series. She's just amazing. And then the final thing, which I've got to give absolute full credit and praise, and 11 out of 10 and everything for, is the performance of Elizabeth Olsen as Wanda Maximoff. She was amazing. This whole series, she's just been stellar all the way through. You could feel her pain, you could feel her sorrow, you could feel the happiness and the joy she felt with her family, and the desperate desire for this to be real. You could feel the torment in her, which obviously Monica understood into, going in at the Hex a few times. She understood with Wanda being in her mind. You could really feel that the agony she had when we saw how Westview was created at the end of episode 8 and how the Hex came about. And where the character's left now, where the Scarlet Witch, the full-blown appearance, the full oncoming of the Scarlet Witch, what we've now seen and where that takes Elizabeth Olsen as an actress, but Wanda as the character, the possibilities are endless. It creates a real sort of huge opportunity to open the doorways into other areas. We saw loads of other things. Like I mentioned, we had the amazing sleight of hand, the rug pull with when Pietro turned up Quicksilver, is this, and it was Evan Peters from the Fox universe and Marvel characters, is this the start of the multiverse? It probably isn't. I never really thought it was, I've got to be honest, and you can listen to our main podcast on the Taylor Network podcast where we talk about this in detail. Never really thought it was, to be honest. Again, doors left open. Might not necessarily be the case that we don't see mutants that way, but this series was never about introducing mutants. It was never about that. Or never about introducing Reed Richards as the aerospace engineer that helped Monica throughout it. We should know that now. Hindsight is a great thing, but it was never going to be about that. It was really always going to be about Wanda's journey and where she is in a place with the loss of vision, or is it the loss of vision? How she created this world? Why is she living in a sitcom world? And as Kevin Feige promised us when this series was introduced a couple of years ago, was announced to us, we have now seen the Scarlet Witch, the real tapping into why she was called in the comics the Scarlet Witch. And that costume is exceptional. There's some amazing concept art for this type of thing a few years ago around about the Civil War art of the movie book, where these sort of concepts were introduced with Wanda. You've got the actual headdress, real sort of Scarlet Witch costume, fantastic. Where this character goes now could be anyway, could be villainous, could be slightly darker edge to it, could be a hero redemption. We know she's going to be appearing in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, which will be awesome. And I think all round, WandaVision was an absolute triumph, considering it wasn't meant to be the first Marvel Studios television show, streaming show, limited event series, as they were called, to air. We were expecting Falcon and the Winter Soldier, which is coming up, and we'll probably see Anthony Mackie Falcon there appearing in this costume. That was going to be first, so this is going to be second. To go high concept, to go on that 50s and 60s sitcom era and be brave enough to do that, this was just an utter triumph as far as I'm concerned, this series. So full marks to WandaVision, full marks to everyone involved in it. And that, I told you I wouldn't spoil too much, but again, as I said earlier, hopefully don't watch this until you've seen that episode, although if you're listening to this bit, too late, you've already heard about it all. So that's my little view of WandaVision. Hope you enjoyed that. Loads more other videos over on our channel if you did enjoy this one. If you did, give it a little like and give it a little subscribe. And we will hopefully see you again on another episode very soon.